right, everyone, welcome. We're glad that you were able to make it on a Saturday morning this early. And we're just going to get started. This is actually one of our first events that we've done for pre-PA students, and I'm going to let Jose Luis take over. So welcome, everyone.
Just piggybacking off of Job, and thank you all for being here. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Mrs. McHugh. Mrs. McHugh is a certified physician assistant. She received both her bachelor's degree and master's of science degrees at Colorado State University in nutritional sciences with a minor in biomedical sciences. Mrs. McHugh went on to attend physician assistant school at Pacific University in Oregon, graduating in 2018 with her Master of Science degree in Physician Assistant Studies. She's now a member of the Society of Dermatology PAs. Through this society, she completed the Diplomat Fellowship, a dermatology-specific program to further expand her knowledge and training in dermatology. Mrs. McHugh has worked at the Cheyenne Skin Clinic and Adoros Day Spa, practicing both medical and cosmetic dermatology since 2018.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and thanks for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen, and I've just got a few slides to share, so bear with me. Oh, and I might need, how do I grant access? Okay. Jackson, help me. Okay. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. See if that worked. Okay, share screen. Basic. Share. Open system. Sorry, guys, just a second. And Sarah and Wiley, you guys might want to do this too. Apparently, you have to open your system preferences to share this. Security and privacy. Later. Shoot.
Like you have to hop out.
Okay, sorry. Give me like 2 seconds. I think I have to quit and reopen to be able to do this. Oops, so sorry. Okay, last try. Let me see if it works. Oh, I think I got it. You are screen sharing. Okay, can people see can everyone see the slides?
Yes.
Sorry that took a few seconds. Okay, so I'm Caitlin McHugh. I'm going to just talk briefly about my path to becoming a PA, and then a little bit about my job now as a dermatology PA. So hi, I'm Caitlin, dermatology PA. I live and work in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I've been at the same job for the last 4.5 years, and I work in both medical and cosmetic dermatology. I went to PA school at Pacific University, and then prior to that, I did a bachelor's and master's in nutrition at Colorado State University. Okay, so let's talk about my path to becoming a PA. And let's talk about the two things that probably people worry about the most when applying to PA school. At least this is what I worried about: my GPA and my GRE score. And I'll let you in on a secret. I didn't have a good GPA or a great GRE score for that matter. So talking about my GPA, so the first 2 years I was in undergrad, I think my GPA was only about 2.5. I really just didn't know what I wanted to be, and I didn't really care that much about school. I was kind of young and dumb, But at the end of my second year of college, I kind of realized I learned about the PA profession and realized that that's what I wanted to be. So I had researched a bunch of PA programs and realized that I needed to up my GPA as well as take certain prerequisites. So I ended up having to do about 5 years for my bachelor's degree instead of 4. But what benefited me on my PA application was that I had this upward trend in GPA, meaning that I did well those last 3 years of my undergrad. But when I still graduated, I was only out like a GPA of a 3.25. I realized that it's a lot easier to lower your GPA than it is to raise your GPA. And then let's chat about the GRE. So I was pretty busy working in school, which I'll get to in a little bit here. And then I was trying to do well with getting good grades. So I kind of rushed to take the GRE. So I did like very average. Looking back, I probably should have done like a study course maybe, or just taken more time to prepare, especially just because I had the lower GPA. But because when I did graduate, I just didn't feel confident in applying with my low GPA and like an average GRE score. So what worked well for me, which I wouldn't just recommend everyone go get a master's degree, but it worked well for me that I had the opportunity to get my master's in nutrition. And from that, I got some research experience. I got a publication, and then I was able to take some upper level graduate level anatomy and physiology courses. And I think like my healthcare advisor or like the health advisor at my college early on had said, like, if you have a lower GPA and you're going to apply to PA school, it's kind of nice to show that you can do well in some of those upper level science classes. And so I got all of that out of getting my master's. And then I guess all of you probably know that to become a PA, it's pretty important to get some patient care hours. And so when I realized that that's what I wanted to do, I took a CNA course, which is a certified nurse assistant course. I did that in about 2.5 weeks. And because of that, I was able to kind of work as a CNA or like an MA at a primary care office for a while, just kind of rooming patients, doing like basic vitals, things like that. And then that job led to my medical scribe job at the same office. And then simultaneously, I had applied for like a phlebotomy job at the hospital where they trained me to become a phlebotomist. I also worked a little bit as a nutrition assistant and a research assistant when I was doing my master's. And then lastly, just wanted to point out that when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I spent a lot of time shadowing different healthcare professionals. And I think this is important because at least in a lot of my PA school interviews, they asked, why do you want to be a PA and why don't you want to be a doctor, or why not a nurse practitioner? And so I think if you have experience shadowing those different healthcare providers, you can kind of speak to why you want to be a PA. And then lastly, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what I do at my current job. So I work 4 days a week. My hours, it's about 6-hour days. I don't take call. I don't work weekends. I don't work holidays. But so it sounds like a pretty great schedule, and it is. But when we are at work, we work hard, and I see about 35 patients a day. And so dermatology PAs tend to do a lot of procedures. So I do a ton of biopsies. I use a lot of liquid nitrogen. We do a lot of injections, INDs for like abscesses and cysts. I work just a half a day a week at a medical spa doing cosmetic dermatology. And so I do a lot of lasers, as well as Botox and filler. And then I don't at my current job, but some of the PA or the dermatology rotations I went on, and I know a lot of PAs that do a lot of excisions, like so for skin cancer surgeries, or they just assist in a certain type of skin cancer surgery called Mohs surgery. So I don't do that, but that is an option that you can do in dermatology. And then I just wanted to like list some of the common diagnoses that I see that you're probably all aware of, but like acne, rosacea, psoriasis. I do a ton of routine skin checks, see a lot of skin cancers, and then I see a ton of rashes. And then lastly, I love that I'm so autonomous at my job. So I get to see and manage my own patients. But what I love the most is that I work really closely with my supervising physicians. So if I get a really complicated patient with like a ton of skin cancers or just a really bad rash, I can always there's always a doctor working, and I can always grab one and get an opinion if I need to, just to give the patient better care, especially if it feels like it's out of my knowledge or scope of practice. So That's pretty much it. I just want to thank you guys for joining and thanks for having me today. And you can let me know if you have any questions now or if we're going to do that after Wiley and Sarah present. And then feel free to stay in touch. I just put my Instagram handle there. I share a lot of dermatology stuff on my Instagram. So that's it.
All right, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Oh, there we go. Orsham?
Yeah, Sarah
Okay.
Orshland.
I want to make sure I pronounced your last name correctly. So next we have Mrs. Orshlam. She is a PA, board certified physician assistant with St. Luke's Neurological and Spine Surgery. She practices a team-based approach in caring for her patients and has special interest in addressing patients' neurological deficits. She collaborates with other specialties to help patients avoid surgery and alleviate common spinal ailments such as neck pain and sciatica. As a PA, she assists in the OR as well as runs an independent clinic to help patients during every step of the surgical process. She is a member of the Congress Neurological Survey, as well as the American Association of Neurological Surgery, where her past research with Dr. Gurpreet Gandok has been recognized and chosen as a late-breaking abstract and presented at both the AANC and CNS meetings. Her interests include spinal fusion, cervical myelopathy, neurogenic claudication, neck and back pain, as well as conservative management of pain with healthy diet and lifestyle modification. When not caring for patients, she enjoys spending time with her family, cheering on Kansas City sport teams, traveling, and cooking.
Hi, can you see my screen? Okay. Thank you for that introduction. My name's Sarah, and I got to go to PA school with both Caitlin and Wiley, which is super fun to see them. I haven't seen them in person since PA school, but yeah, I'm going to kind of bring the neurosurgery perspective to things today. I would say right out of one of the reasons I went to PA school is because I didn't have one specialty that I was really passionate about, or I said, if I don't do that, like I won't enjoy my job or something like that. I was very open. And during rotations, I ended up really liking surgery and being drawn to surgery. There was a neurosurgery opening after graduation in Kansas City at one of the best hospitals to work at. And I applied for it. And that's where I've been the last 4.5 years. So there's a lot of variety as a PA working in the neurosurgical specialty. And my slides aren't as organized or as good as Caitlin's, but hang in there with me. So my background is I worked in both journalism and TV production before deciding to move back home and take some prerequisite courses. And I thought I might want to go to med school. I wasn't very familiar growing up in the Midwest. We didn't have a lot of exposure to PAs, like 20 years ago. I knew what nurse practitioners were. I had friends who were nurse practitioners, but PAs weren't really on my radar. And I was about 27 at the time when I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to take these prerequisite classes. I have to get some experience like Caitlin was talking about. And so for experience, that was kind of hard because I was taking some undergrad courses. I didn't have a lot of connections to like shadow different people. I mean, I had connections, but I'm finding more and more anyway, for students that even ask me, a lot of the big hospital systems and stuff are really resistant to just letting anyone come in and shadow. So that can be a really big challenge, but it is important to have those shadowing hours under your belt. So what I did is Kansas City has the first free clinic in the country. It's now called KC Care Clinic. And I did not need, for whatever reason, any kind of like CNA certification or anything like that. And I went and weaseled my way in there and volunteered there 1 to 2 times a week, probably for a year or two while I was in school. I worked at a local gym. And so I was around people that kind of, cared about their health. And that was just a nice environment for me to be in during that time. I helped them start a gender inclusive kind of workout group that was one of the first of its kind anywhere in the country. And so that was just a great opportunity to be a part of that while I was in school. And I, at one point while studying, I was working at a colorectal surgeon's office, just at like the front desk, but that helped me too, just for exposure of like what it's like to be in a private practice and around these patients and surgical patients and all of that. And I think because of my background in a lot of different fields, I have a pretty unique perspective. I think all of us do, actually, the three of us PAs, when it comes to working with people. It's unique when you can appreciate every single person who you're working with in the day because you've been in their shoes. And so to be able to know like what the schedulers are doing up front, and also what my medical assistant's doing, what my nurses are doing, and how hard or challenging that might be, kind of, I don't know. I think it has allowed me to be friends with everybody that I work with. And that's been a really good advantage. So that's been good. So I applied. I had a really good GPA coming out of undergrad, but then I worked in fields that had very little to do with medicine. I had gone on some like mission trips type stuff and done some different volunteering. But I made a pretty big pivot, like I said, from TV production at the age of 27, came home, looked into some like formal post-baccalaureate, isn't that what it's, I think that's what it's called, post-bac programs for med school. Johns Hopkins has one, and I believe UMKC, where I took my courses, also had one. Instead of worrying about whether or not I got into it, I just took the necessary courses and made sure that I got a decent GPA while doing those courses, and then applied to some schools. I was getting married. I got married in 2016, right before PA school started. And my husband traveled for his job, and we both said, let's apply to some just random PA schools and see which ones I get into and where I get interviews, because we both loved travel. And so Pacific ended up being the right school, and I was really happy with it all the way through. Let's see. So graduated PA school, was living out in Oregon, applied to some jobs out in Oregon. I think one of the things that makes the PA profession so unique, like I said earlier, is that you can pick and choose what specialty you want to work in. And so I kind of knew that I liked surgery. One of the jobs I almost took out in Oregon was an ENT surgery position. And we wanted to stay out there, but for a number of reasons and wanting to be close to family, I ended up taking the neurosurgery position back in Kansas City. And I almost the whole time I've been there have been aligned one-on-one with the same neurosurgeon. There's 10 PAs in our practice. There are six right now. We're getting a new director coming this summer. So we'll have 7 fellowship trained neurosurgeons in all different specialties. We have a really good group right now, but our PAs do everything from place EVDs, which I don't do because I don't work the inpatient side predominantly. If I wanted to do that, I could have gotten trained in that. I'd placed a few and just did not want to be the person who got called to do that, basically. I ended up kind of having a schedule where I work 2 days a week in clinic and 2 days a week in surgery with the same surgeon. And that has been super busy. And then I take call 1 in 10 weekends where I'm on with one of the neurosurgeons. And so we have a few PAs who do lumbar punctures for like NPH workups, or just lumbar punctures for the inpatient side of things, for different workups, like idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Neurosurgery is pretty fun because the surgeons you're working with all did at least one neurosurgical residency, and then the ones I worked with also did a fellowship. And so there are really good PAs in neurosurgery. There's really good neurosurgeons in neurosurgery. And then there's the opposite of that too. And I think you'll find that in any field. I've worked with some brand new fellowship trained neurosurgeons who have never had a PA, never worked with a PA. And they were just kind of like, oh, like they didn't teach you this in school. And I'm like, no, like I was in school for 2.5 years, like I learned more of a broad spectrum of things, but they wouldn't know the first thing about what Caitlin does on a daily basis. So it's just kind of interesting how you get in there. There's a lot of on-the-job training. I picked this specific practice because they had a 6-month fellowship built in, which I ended up being very disappointed in. And like, I didn't even have to finish the whole thing because my training was really because of my neurosurgeon who I was aligned with. He was super intense and he's from India. He's done 2 neurosurgical residencies, a master's degree in cost-based analysis, and just was ready to treat me like a resident for a little while there. I'm glad I stuck with it, and we have a really good relationship now. This image that I have up for you. So these are just 2 different surgeries that we did over the years. This one on the left, you can see these are both sagittal views of the lumbar spine. Over here, this is an L5 S1 spondylolisthesis. This is a 35-year-old woman who came to our office on crutches, progressively worsening low back pain, started to develop weakness in her lower extremities. We got her imaging, and sure enough, this is what it looked like. And so this was an urgent elective surgery is kind of how we look at it. And one of the more common surgeries that I was doing, because the surgeon I work with is fellowship trained in spine. And you can see over here, this is the post-op. She has done extremely well. She's walking on her own, no deficits to speak of, kind of has her life back. She will always have some degree of back pain. I tell these patients they have about a 10% chance of developing adjacent segment disease as compared to someone who's never had a surgery. And with her being the young age of 35 at this surgery, the likelihood of her needing another surgery in her lifetime is decent. But this was a really good result and something that we did often. Over here, this is the cervical spine. This was a man who came in with some findings that were consistent with cervical myelopathy. This is an intradural tumor. It ended up being benign. And this is the pre-op imaging. There's a tumor. This is post-op imaging. As you can see, this is the patient from the side, another sagittal view with the chin being up here, back of the neck here, brainstem here, and then the spinal cord's that gray in there. And what you want to see is that white in front and the white in back. And that's the spinal fluid in the dura. So that was a beautiful result as well. And that guy was really pleased. I think he was 37-ish, had a family, was very active. And like I said, that was benign. I think we did some workup for a few different, like neurofibromatosis and a number of different things, but I think they all came back negative. So those are 2 of the things that we do. And then, yeah, I hope you guys like these pictures here to the right. I didn't, I did this quickly, but what I love about being a physician assistant is that I get the opportunity to work with a number of people during the day. I'm very much a part of the team. When it comes to the OR, we have our own kind of culture down there, and it's super fun. I'm doing everything from, prepping the patient, talking to the patient in the morning, making sure they don't have any more questions, getting them ready, and then helping the anesthesia staff with whatever they need, positioning the patient. And we also have ortho residents come through with us, the interns, the first years, and that's super fun because they're interested and they want to learn. And we have some medical students come through. And then also with clinic days can be really long, and this population specifically requires a lot of time. And a lot of people are in a lot of pain. So you get to know your patients well. There is a high degree of success and fulfillment that comes from knowing your patients long term. So that's nice. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. I did work on some research last 2 years ago. Wow, it's been a while. With Dr. Gandok, that's him down here, and that's us in surgery. But that was kind of fun too. Just research is not like where my focus is. It takes a lot of time away from my family and the things that I love to do. But it was also nice to just get that experience. The conferences with neurosurgery are really fun. So the Congress of Neurological Surgery, the AANS, and there's always something specific for PAs at those two, which is nice as well. You kind of get to know the PA community as well. That was way too long, so I apologize, but that's that.
No, that was great. Thank you so much. And seeing the patient imaging also, that's amazing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Mr. McCready. Mr. McCready is a certified physician assistant practicing orthopedics in Southwest Colorado. Before attending PA school at Pacific University, he completed his undergrad with a degree in finance at the University of Colorado, Boulder. He's originally from Telluride, Colorado, and got his initial medical experience as a ski patroller on the Telluride ski area. He enjoys skiing, golf, fly fishing, and hiking.
Thank you for that introduction. I will end up repeating some of that. But yeah, my name's Wiley. I live down here in Durango, Colorado. Let me figure this out real quick. Maybe. There we go. So yeah, I live down here in Durango, Colorado, with my lovely wife and our 2 daughters. Also our Cavalier King Charles Spaniel named Louis, who would be bummed if I didn't shout him out. I am from this part of the world. I grew up in Telluride, Colorado. As he said, I enjoy golf, skiing, fly fishing. I also crochet. Fun fact about me, crochet got me through PA school, if that's easy to believe. I like both of them kind of ended up in the PA profession in an unconventional way. I ended up going to CU Boulder and got into the business school. Finance was the class that I hated the least, and so that was the emphasis that I chose. Got my degree, immediately went back to Telluride once I graduated, started ski patrolling. I was bartending and managing a restaurant all at the same time. So it was fun, but it was not a sustainable model. Through ski patrolling, being on scene, I realized that medicine was something that I wanted to pursue and started looking into it, landed on PA. Had to go back to do all my prereqs, which was a good thing that I didn't take them as an original undergrad because I did not get the greatest grades. Went back, did really well. To Caitlin's point, I think the big reason that I got into PA school, I'm still convinced it was a clerical error, but the increase in my grades from when I was an undergrad to going back, I think spoke worlds for me. I did my volunteering at Denver Health in the ED. I also did a lot of my shadowing there with the docs and the PAs there. And then got into Pacific, graduated Pacific with these 2 lovely people. And my first job out of school was actually neurosurgery, like Sarah. I was at the Level 1 Trauma Center in Oregon, kind of fell into it, but it was great. Learned a lot. It was a lot, but it was a really good first job out of school. Came time to move closer to family. So I found a job in orthopedic surgery doing hip and knee arthroplasty down here in Durango, and that's what I've been doing since. It's been a wonderful change of pace. I went from 15 days of call a month to about 4. Went from call having to go in at 2, 3 in the morning regularly to haven't had to do that in forever. It's been an easy transition from neurosurgery to hip and knee, because neurosurgery, there's a lot of hip and knee stuff, or a lot of hip stuff at least, that shows up in that clinic that you have to deal with and send them to the correct people. But that is all I got for now, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. That was great. I think we'll go ahead and jump into the Q&A. And please, as we ask them, each of your individual experiences, I think is it's great that we have them here. So answer them in your whatever you get from the questions. So one of the first ones that we had is, and Mrs. Olson already answered a version of hers here in the chat, but it would be great for you guys to give your answer as well. When and how do you select a field of focus, or how did that turn out for you?
I'll go first. I honestly fell into neurosurgery. I got a call from a neurosurgeon who was one of the neurosurgeons at the hospital that a lot of us did our trauma rotations at. And he was asking one of the trauma PAs, if they knew anybody, and I had rotated with them, and she recommended me, and he called me, and we clicked, and it went great. So that kind of goes to the point when you guys are on rotations, make sure you are present all the time and you treat everybody with as much respect and as much respect as you can, and just be present, and things will come your way.
Yeah, I'll just say, I remember hearing like treat every rotation like it's a job interview. Because you never know who you're gonna run into, or who needs a job or needs to hire a PA or whatever. But I would say I kind of knew I wanted to do dermatology going into rotation. So I had set mine up to do, I did 2 kind of elective dermatology rotations. One I did in Boise, Idaho, and then the second one I did, it was actually, so my husband's stepmom is a dermatologist at the clinic I work at now, and they were hiring. And so I had interviewed during my last year of PA school, and I had got the job. So I set up my last rotation to do kind of a 6-week training period with them. So I would say you can kind of, I guess, pick whenever, but if you know ahead of time, you can kind of set up your rotations to kind of do more of what you want to do. So.
I feel like I've definitely talked a lot, so sorry, but though I just want to say the one mistake that I have seen a lot with medical students and PA students that have come through neurosurgery is they get really intimidated by the neurosurgeon I work with, and they lie, and it's really easy to read it. So it's like, do you have any interest in neurosurgery? Well, if you don't, don't make it up. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you can say like, I'm ready to learn everything that I can during this rotation. I don't think that neurosurgery is probably the field I'm going to work in, but it might be. And then do your best while you're on those rotations to kind of prepare for everything that could get thrown your way. Like, it's neurosurgery, so somebody may ask you about your cranial nerves, which you haven't looked at in, a few years or something like that. So that's just good I hear a lot of people get asked during rotations, like, so like, why'd you get into medicine? And you can just read through like that, like really nervous kind of automated response that people go to, like, oh, I just really want to help people. And it's like, just be ready for those kind of questions. And remember that everyone you're working with is just a person. Like even the neurosurgeons have their flaws.
That's great. Yeah, I think that lends a lot of perspective. That's important. There's a sort of follow-up question from an attendee. After PA school, what can I do to stand out to apply to competitive fields like neurosurgery? And I think there was kind of a consensus in your answer that your rotations play a huge part in what work looks like after graduation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I definitely think that's kind of all you have to go off of. It's if it's your first job out of PA school, I think it's like you got to talk up your experience on rotations and highlight that in your resume and CV. So
Right, we've got another question here. Any tips for an incoming college freshman who wants to become a PA?
take your science classes seriously.
Yeah,
Do
show up
well.
to class, go to class.
Do
That's
well in school.
yep, that's my main piece of advice. Go to class. That was the ticket for me from original undergrad to returning to school. Was you just got to go to class.
Yeah, just take school seriously, do well, and I think starting to figure out shadowing and volunteering and like patient care hours. So I think honestly, if you can do it earlier on, then you're not cramming. Like I think I was working like 20 hours a week later on, which was kind of a lot. If you could do a little bit earlier on, I think you'll have better time with schoolwork and getting those hours.
The other piece of advice I would have is PA schools are really looking for dynamic candidates that like have a lot of kind of interesting life experience. So that is definitely the reason I got into PA school, is because I could talk about being on television production sets and journalism and travel and stuff like that. And so being able to bring life experience to the table is also important to set you apart from the other candidates.
Yeah, don't be afraid to take a gap year too. Sometimes you just need a break between undergrad and PA school. I guess I didn't take a break, so don't. I'm just saying that now looking back.
I took a long break and it was very important.
We have another question coming through. As you mentioned, it has become hard to find PAs to shadow. This is an attendee that lives in California and feels that this has been especially hard here. Do you have any tips?
Gosh, I think for me, I remember I reached out to friends' parents, like I had friends whose parents were in the medical field, and that was like how I got a lot of my shadowing hours, because it's tough. And actually, my husband just went through this. He's a medical student, or yeah, he's a fourth year medical student. But when he was trying to shadow, I remember certain hospitals would make it so difficult to shadow, like you had to get all these vaccines and all this stuff. And so it was just a pain for, I think, attendings or doctors to take you on to shadow. So I think reaching out to people, honestly.
One thing I'm getting ready to change into a different practice that's a private practice, and one thing that they do there that's super cool is their CNAs are all pre-med students getting ready to, all studying for the MCAT, and they're all getting ready to go to med school. So they take that position really seriously as a CNA, because I mean they're prepping the patients, they're getting them ready, they're showing up to work on time every day because they know that is there. And there's a few of them who want to go to PA school. That's their job interview, or that's their letter of recommendation for school. That's how you get that experience. And that's what you get to talk about in your interview too. Like, well, yeah, I know exactly what goes on as a PA versus a physician in a clinic setting or whatever.
Yeah, and I think, finding a job like a CNA or an MA, something that you can do without a ton of education would be a way to get a foot in the door and then be able to shadow when you're not working. Because some schools are really sticklers about actual shadowing versus work experience. So that would be another way that I've seen people get their shadowing experience, is find a job and just get your foot in the door.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, and I'm in California and I work in a hospital, is like healthcare is just generally in the US it's very regulated.
Mhm.
And in California it's really regulated. And so one of the challenges, you need to have like a purpose to get into a hospital, because like volunteering and even like shadowing, there's a lot of liability issues. And so I just posted 2 sessions that we did on getting clinical experience. There's a lot of things you could do to get into a hospital with just like maybe just CPR, like lift teams and patient escort. And I think that's like the coolest job to have. is because you get to go around the hospital and see different things and interact with different people. But getting EMT and CNA and all of these other things requires a little bit of time, phlebotomist, but it gets you into the hospital. You get paid. Like in California, you can make pretty good money as inside of a hospital. Like even lift teams make like $23 an hour or something. And so I think that's one of the big things you got to do. You got to take that step, and getting a CPR card, I think, is only 4 hours or 6 hours. But getting an EMT, CNA, there's EMT classes you could do in 2.5 weeks, and CNA classes you could do in 3 weeks. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to get into a hospital, but it takes effort. It's and once you're in there, you could say, "Oh, I'm really interested in PA," and you could talk to PAs because you already have this magic thing called a badge. You got all of your shots, you got cleared. Uh, if something falls on your head, the hospital will cover your disability and everything else. And so it takes an initiative, and this is true for both PA and med school. Is that being an EMT on an ambulance. So there's all of these different things you could do.
Another question that we have coming in, we kind of have the unique experience of having graduates all from Pacific University. So why was Pacific University the school that you chose, and how did you prioritize where to apply?
I'll just start and say, I had researched a bunch of programs, and I kind of remember Pacific posting like where, like maybe their, gosh, what's it called? Like they would put like the students that were accepted, their like demographics, and there was a handful of people from Colorado that got into Pacific. So that was on my radar just because I knew I was applying from Colorado, and they looked like they had liked Colorado students. And then I was looking for cool places to live, and Oregon was one of them. So.
Sure.
Yeah, same. I'll go. Are you okay? I applied to UMKC in Kansas City and Pacific in Oregon, and it was also like I just wanted to go somewhere cool. Pacific specifically had the added advantage of being a travel program, so I knew my rotations could be like all over the country. At one point, my husband and I had thought it would be cool for me to do like one of their international rotations, which I didn't end up doing, but those were the pulls for me. And it's very important that like you get all of your paper when applying, you get like everything in like with ample time. And because that's what ended up happening with UMKC, even though I got it in like the day of, like some transcript didn't get sent over. So I got placed into the alternate like group in case they didn't have enough good candidates for their like 35 spots out of the first 15,000 applicants or however many they had. And so they didn't need me. But yeah, I feel like there was a bit of luck and fate involved. And I was also really persistent with Pacific. They had also written me and said, "We're sorry, your application is incomplete." And I had made sure that my application was complete 2 weeks prior, but then that woman went on maternity leave. And so instead of just like taking the rejection and pivoting with my life, thankfully I wrote back and I said, "Here's the proof that my application was complete. Like, what can I do?" And I ended up getting an interview, and then it worked out. So there is a bit of luck involved. There's a lot of incredible candidates out there.
I ended up at Pacific because a person that I used to ski patrol with, she actually got in the year before us, and she said, "Hey, you should check this out as well." Because I was applying kind of all over. I was applying close to family around the country. I was applying to Emory down in Atlanta because my wife's family's from there. I applied to Cornell because they're a surgical emphasis. I don't know if you saw in my presentation, there are thinkers and there are tinkerers, and I am definitely team tinkerers. It was always going to be surgery or something procedure heavy. And then Rosalind Franklin in Chicago because I have family there. And yeah, Pacific was the place that I got into. I got waitlisted at Rosalind Franklin, but that was it. And it's the best thing that could have ever happened, by the way. Pacific is awesome.
Heck yeah, we had a great class.
Yep.
And a great time.
Yep.
Mhm.
It seems like very different paths, but you all ended up at the same place. So it's nice to get your different perspectives on that. How long would you say your journey took with school and gaining experience, the whole piece there?
I guess it kind of depends on where you want to think about where that starts, because like I've said, nothing that I did prior to like medicine specific went wasted. I don't regret like my prior careers and stuff like that. And it all contributed to my application process. But it did feel lengthy when I was trying to get into PA school. I was like, oh man, I got to take this course again because, I took it 5 years ago, but it's out of date or whatnot. And I would say specifically trying to get into school, it took me about 3 years of really focusing on getting into school before I got in.
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
oh, sorry, Wiley.
No, go ahead.
Once I figured out I wanted to be a PA, I think it was 5 years. It did like 3 years of undergrad left that I still had to do. And then I went and do a master's for 2 years. But I guess I applied halfway through my master's, so like 4 years. But I was also like kind of starting from scratch at that point. So
Yeah, in earnest, actual trying to get into PA school was about 3 years. That's when I went back for my prereqs and all that stuff, volunteering. But to Sarah's point, it's the whole thing. It's everything that you do leading up to it. Med school, you go from school to school. Like PA school, you traditionally go from school to do something else and then to school. So really, everything that I've done leading up to this was part of that. I just didn't really realize it at that time.
Following the same theme here, we have a question asking how you dealt with rejection. I'm assuming they're asking, through the application cycle and hearing back from schools.
I'll just say I remember applying. I think I had read online somewhere that maybe, and you guys can correct me if you've heard differently, but if you apply to about 7 schools, I think that your chances don't increase if you apply to more schools. So I think I had started with like 7 schools and then I wasn't hearing anything and I went into like panic mode and I just sent out like probably 7 more applications, like kind of all over. So I ended up applying to like 14 programs. And then interviews started rolling in. And I think
all called you back.
What was that? No, I think I
called you back.
only had like, oh my gosh, Jackson will have to correct me. Maybe only 3 interviews that I went to. Maybe I got like 5 interviews. I only went to like 3. And then Pacific actually, once I got in or once I interviewed, I think they called you like a week later. And so I was like sold. I loved Pacific that I just I think I canceled a couple interviews and then I think it's not until later in the process that you get that rejection. Like, we didn't want to interview you. It was like in March and you're like, oh, well, kind of worked out already, but I'll let you guys also add what you think.
Pacific was the last school I actually heard from. Like I said, I got waitlisted at Rosalind Franklin, but I really wanted to go to CU Denver or Anschutz. Because we were already in Denver, it would have been easy, didn't have to move, all that stuff. Thank God I didn't, because it's a 3-year program, pediatric focused, and it was definitely a blessing. That was a hard email to get. I remember, still remember where I was, but you just gotta keep your head down, just keep working, keep striving for it. It'll happen. You just gotta keep putting one foot in front of the other.
I would just say rejection is part of life, and unless you're rejected, and if you're not rejected, then you haven't done anything in your life.
Amen.
And so you have to take risks, and it is a risk to apply. So there's going to be rejection, and I think you just need to find a support system that can support you when you are rejected, and and have people that in your community and loved ones to lift you up. So
I'll just quickly say too, I think I went into applying to PA school assuming I was going to have to apply twice because I just had heard so many people didn't get in the first time. So I was like, I'm just going to apply now. And if I don't get in, that's just how it's going to go. I'm going to apply twice. And honestly, if you have to apply twice, I think it shows that you're committed to it. So I would say don't get bummed out if you get that rejection email. Just apply the next round and explain why you still want to be a PA. And I think it'll work out for you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's definitely part of life. It's something that I experienced multiple times during my 20s. I don't do very well with rejection. I panicked when I didn't think I was getting into PA school, and I applied for a job doing medical sales devices. I am not a salesperson. That would have just sucked the soul out of my body. And I got pretty far in that process until I didn't get that job because I didn't have any prior sales experience. And I remember feeling very defeated. Again, I was a receptionist at a colorectal surgery office. I was like, I don't even have like health insurance, and I'm, edging up on 30. So I was feeling not too great about myself, but I just, like I said, even when they said no, I like wrote back and was like, whoa. I made sure that this was all in place. And that's the reason that I got the interview. So I think there is something to be said for being very persistent, not being scared to apply again. Make sure you're enjoying your life during the process of trying to get into PA school. It shouldn't be like, because what happens is you get into PA school, and then PA school is really, really hard for 2.5 years. And you're like, man, once I get through this first didactic year, my life's going to be better. Once I get through this rotation, my life's going to be better. And it becomes, I think that happens with medical school, residency, so forth. And so just kind of accepting that this is your life right now, whatever it looks like, and find the things that you enjoy every day, and the support system and all of that.
Another question coming through, which I'm glad it's asked, I think maybe not paid enough attention to. How did you go about taking out a loan? Being a first generation Latina, the attendees asking, the number is really intimidating. Yeah, it is.
I'll talk. I think knowing that this is a 2.5-year program, my likelihood of getting a job was high after PA school. And that gave me the confidence that I could do that. Caitlin has done a phenomenal job paying off her loans. So she is the one who should talk about that.
Oh gosh, sorry. And I had to mute myself because I had missed the question. I was asking Jackson what the question was. It was, how did you take on all that debt? Like knowing, or just.
Yeah, I think in essence, like the financial aspect, how is it taking out a loan? How did you attack it, manage it?
Yeah. I honestly didn't think anything of it when I took the loans out, because I think I was just young and naive and I was like, oh, I'll just take these loans out and then I'll be able to pay them back. And we went to a private school, and tuition's really high. And so as soon as you get your job, and I think you have to pay your loans back within, you get like a 6-month grace period. And that first payment was like, wow. I think I signed up for like the 10-year loan repayment plan, and my first payment was like $2,500. Honestly, what saved me was the loan forbearance, where we weren't accruing interest for the last, I don't know, few years. And I just I think, I don't know if you guys follow like the white coat investor, this whole like live like a resident mindset. When you get out of school and you get your first job, don't like buy all the fancy things, like live below your means and just save all that money. And it just takes a few years, and you can, I don't know, hopefully just pay off your loans that way. But that's definitely what I've been doing, is just living way below my means. So.
But Caitlin, could you also add that you have not been starving, and that you?
Oh no, I'm not. No, I was not starving. I just, I don't know, money management. We did like a few things, like we bought like a really rundown loft and like fixed it up ourselves and sold it and made a bunch of money. And I put that money towards my loan repayment. And then getting a high yield savings account early on, because I wish I would have done that earlier. You accrue so much interest if you just keep some money there for like, if you're going to pay off your loans. I think a cheap, oh yeah, and we just live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It's really cheap to live here. So maybe just use when you get out of school and you need to get a job, maybe pick somewhere cheap to live and just learn how to be a PA and pay off your loans for a few years, and then you can get that experience and move somewhere that you want to live.
Any words of wisdom from Wiley and
Uh,
Sarah?
so I put myself through undergrad with loans, so it was kind of just adding to that pile. It, Caitlin touched on all of the things: live like a resident, blah 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 blah. But you don't have to skimp on everything, and we're managing it just fine.
Yeah, I again, like, I think knowing, I was very confident once I got out of PA school that I would get a job. It may not have been the job that I liked or wanted, but that at least gave me and that I would be able to have a job for life. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't, the PA school was kind of my way of being like, okay, like, at least, when I'm 50 years old, like, if I want to work in a hospital and do this, like, no one can take this away from me. So that was a big part of wanting to get that degree, and start working.
Unless you're going to make good money as a PA, you're going to be able to afford your student loan repayment. Like, even if you just do it monthly payment for 30 years, you'll be able to make your payment. So don't be scared about taking out debt to go to PA school. Like, you'll make it work. And then there's other like public student loan forgiveness options. And there's a bunch of things out there that you can do to help with your debt if you really, really worry about it that much. So
There are excellent resources, because of our online capabilities, for how to pay off these loans, and people who've done it before you.
Yeah, so we put the National Health Service score. There's a bunch of other ones as well. I think two of the students that are speaking today, they're National Health Scholars. We put the PA salary nationally as well. So none of you have starved, right? You guys were able to, like, weren't homeless. Yeah, I think with just the debt, you have to look at it in the sense to say that it's an investment, just like if you go buy a house and you have to take that debt and you build an asset. And so, your education is an asset that you can make. I think national average is $130,000. And obviously if you live in California or New York or any of those high yield places, you make more. But yeah, and so I think it's an investment. And I think that there could be a lot of fears of going into PA school, but I don't think being able to have a job and be able to make a living should be one of them. I think it's a pretty secure thing. It's all the other things I think are, the doubt. The question I was going to ask is, if any of you would do this again, what would you do differently?
good question. I don't know if I would have done well. I don't know. I think I'm very happy where I am today, so it's hard to say like if I would do anything differently. If I could, gosh, I don't know. Maybe if I took school seriously more earlier on, I would have gotten to PA school a little bit quicker, but I think that was all part of the process. So
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, because I am grateful for all the parts of my experience. So that sounds like a little Pollyanna-ish or whatever, but I don't want to do PA school again, and I don't want to do it with different people than who I got to do it with, for what that's worth.
Yeah, I love what I do. I don't think I would be where I am if I would have taken school more seriously the first time, or if I would have at least like tried to go down this path. I think going through original undergrad and getting that out of my system, and then doing, then living my life for a little while, and then falling into medicine, I don't think I'd be here. So I don't think I'd do anything differently, to be quite honest. I'd save more money. That's what I would do.
Yeah, actually, save earlier on. Yeah.
Save earlier. Yep.
Seems like the financial aspect, just like with applications or studying, you have to do your legwork and do your studying on how to manage all that as well. We have another question, kind of fits the theme here. How do you think PAs have impacted the medical field now with your personal experience and patient care experience? What has stood out to you as being a PA?
What's the beginning part of that question?
Oh, sorry. Let me pull it back up here. It was, how do you feel like PAs have impacted the medical field?
I mean, in Wyoming, we love PAs because I feel like there's just a lot of PAs work in rural areas that you can't get a lot of doctors to go to. And I know with Wyoming, at least now, PAs are considered independent practitioners. But like in my practice, patients always tell me that, the ones that see me, they're like, we love seeing you and like the other PAs because we get to spend more time. You get to spend more time with your patients. And sure, I still see like 35 patients in one day, and I feel like I'm seeing 1 million at once, but the doctors see more than I do. So they even spend less time with patients. And, they're a great resource to have in the clinic, but I kind of like having a little extra time with my patients, and I'm not afraid to say I don't know and just look things up. And there was another part of that question too that I think I'm missing, but I'll let you guys chime in.
Yeah, I think it's increasing patient access to somebody. For me being in orthopedics, just getting in the door to at least see somebody, and I see most of my patients independently. And then I can get them to, the sports medicine surgeon quicker. I can hopefully take care of it primarily. But I think the best thing that I've seen is just increase in patient access to healthcare.
Yeah, I will add that it takes a little while, but it's a wonderful feeling once you feel proficient anyway in what you're doing, because you feel confident that you're really helping people as a PA. And I also can see a clinic independently, and we had a case come in like 2 weeks ago, and I'm so comfortable at this point with my supervising physician and vice versa that the radiologist had said that the patient had a syrinx on the MRI in the cervical spine, and it just looked a little weird, and the presentation was a little weird. And I went in and I saw her, and nothing was really I just didn't feel right about it. So I went and got the surgeon, and he's like, I disagree with the radiologist. That's not a syrinx, and like was showing me why. And I was still skeptical of him. But he ended up being right. And I was so glad that I didn't just send that patient on to either go get more imaging or whatnot, because she needed to see a neurologist, and she ended up having MS. But most people probably would have missed that if they didn't ask, because the radiologist had gotten it wrong too. But it's really nice to be in that collaborative environment. I love working with other PAs too. I learn from them all the time. And so I think every specialty, it's a little different. Caitlin has more autonomy in her practice than I do in mine. But the inpatient PAs in neurosurgery have more autonomy than I do, because I have traded that in for one-on-one with the physician, basically. So there's just, I think PAs add a lot to healthcare. Somewhere like Kansas City, people are still less familiar with PAs. I still hear about like pushback about, I don't want to see a PA, I want to see a neurosurgeon. And I don't care. My schedule is just jam-packed full. But I will also just go grab a neurosurgeon. You know, if somebody comes and sees me and they're not, I know that deep down they don't feel satisfied with our visit, then I'll just go grab someone to say hi to them. So there's a little bit of humility involved there, but at the end of the day, I always look at it like, if I'm going to a specialist for the biggest problem in my life, I might also want to see the surgeon.
All righty. Well, thank you guys again for coming today. And we have the next person coming in who is we're going to be introduced in a second. Thank you again for making time. All different time zones. I
Thanks
might
for
add.
having us.
Thanks for having us. This was
For having us.
great.